Hello, 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 and welcome to another Rocky Brand live stream. See, my lighting is quite bright today, so I've got quite a pale look to my complexion. Hopefully everything is going okay. I think we've got about a 20-second delay between what I'm saying here in Scotland and what you're going to then receive on YouTube. So if you ask any questions or that tonight, don't worry if there's like a bit of a delay, because it'll take a little while for me to see them. But I'm excited about today's stream because we are joined by Hayden Burges today, and it's going to be a really great discussion. We're going to be talking about pricing mainly, with a bit of sales. Pricing is probably one of the things that gives the biggest fear to a lot of freelancers. Having to deal with clients and talking money can be pretty scary for some. I know it was pretty scary for me for a long time. And you still, I still get butterflies whenever I move to a new pricing bracket or something like that. It can really push your buttons when it comes to that. So just a quick bit about Hayden. So Hayden's business is called pitchr, Pitchr, very trendy. And we've got quite a bit in common. I'll let Hayden give a full introduction himself, but I just wanted to say that on Hayden's website, he says that his aim is to help more designers get confident with selling the epic work that they create. And I'm pretty much in the same boat. I want people to feel really, really confident with what they do. So I'm not going to yabber on too much. I'm just going to make sure that everything is okay. Getting a bit of a warning about the stream bitrate, but we'll just crack on and let's bring Hayden into the call. There he is. Hello, sir.
Hey, Cole.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
And you. So yeah, so I've got us on a split screen kind of thing going here, so they can see both of us at the same time.
Cool.
Let me just double check that I've not got any questions coming in. So as I say, if anyone's got any questions, please type them into the chat box on YouTube just to let me know that you can hear me. It does say that we've got viewers who are watching right now. So yeah, so let's just start then, Hayden. Just give us a little bit of history about who you are and where you're from and why you're doing what you're doing.
Hey, Cole. So I'm from New Zealand. If you can't tell from my beautiful accent, it's almost as nice as yours. I think there's something about Scottish accent I really love. And you guys have better comedy. But yeah, so I'm from New Zealand. My background's kind of like I've been in artist and designer now for about 12 years. But that's always kind of been my part full-time thing, main passion. But my family is, my dad he's had this business for about 20 years, which is sales training, right? So sales training, business coaching. And he kind of brought me into that and was like, Hayden, your job sucks. Well, he didn't say that to me, but I knew it sucked. You're not going to get anywhere in that job. Why don't you come back home and work with me and you can kind of learn how to do what I do? So I did that for a long time. And yeah, I guess just a couple of years ago, I was like, man, I'm sick of wearing a suit. I'm sick of having to hide my tattoos. But that wasn't the thing. It's like, I just realized that I wanted to work with people that I could really kind of connect with. So I was like, fuck it, I want to work. Oh, I don't know if you can swear on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Cole.
It's fine.
So
I'm Scottish. Yeah, it's fine. I can take it.
Cool. So for me, I now do what I do, but I work with the creatives, kind of mainly designers and photographers, some illustrators, and I help them with sales and stuff like that. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's like I say, we're very similar in sort of what we're doing, but you're on the other side of the world to me, so we're in very different time zones. And I should say that I messed up on my graphic for the call today because I had your time zone 2 hours earlier than it was, but it just
we usually meet at 6 a.m, don't we?
We do.
We usually have 6 to see Cole.
Yeah. So, and I'm too lazy to do the morning shift, so Hayden takes that bullet for everything. But yeah, everything seems to be going okay. We've got I think it's Naboja saying hello in the chat, so things seem to be going okay there. Like I say, there is a bit of it says there's a stream warning, but I'm just going to keep going and we'll see how it goes at the end. So I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of, I've got some questions. If there's anything that, you want to start with about pricing, maybe,
Yeah.
what do you find that, I suppose, do you find that it's a common issue or problem that you have with, your students, your mentees, that you work with? Is it something that people come into and go, oh, I really can't face pricing?
I think it is, and I think it's and it's why a lot of us talk about it, right? Because, and I think the big thing, and I think you'll agree with me on this, is that we're so personally invested in the work because it's our creative output. It's not like we're working for someone else, or we're making a piece of machinery or a widget or doing something like that. This is, I think, so much closer to us because it's yeah, we really feel it when someone kind of rejects our ideas or rejects our pricing, because it's all on us. And I think for a lot of new freelancers especially, we're not used to being the person who makes those decisions and who has to deal with the pushback from the client. And the classic thing, of course, is that we aren't really taught. I mean, I'm a self-taught I'm designer and artist, but if you went to design school, of course you're not taught any of this, and that's the thing, right?
Nope.
So we're terrified of pricing, and I think there's a lot of stuff that comes into that. It's like, for example, if you go on a Facebook group, and I've had a lot of my clients have commented on this to me. Oh, people say that I would never pay anything more than X amount for a logo or X amount, right?
Yeah.
And so you see that stuff and you go, shit, am I too expensive? Am I not expensive enough? I've had 15 years as an in-house designer and I'm on my own. How much should I be charging? I feel like I've got 15 years of experience, but this is my client, right? We could talk about this all day, but what I think it really comes down to is we don't see the value in what we do. And I think what I'm really big on is going like, hey, like if you really can understand the impact you have on the client's business. And I think that's the problem that I see. A lot of people don't truly understand how, and if we're talking about, kind of branding in this instance or logo design, how much of an impact that can have on the client's business and their bottom line, and I'm not saying people should kind of like go out the gate and go, well, I know this is going to make you hundreds of thousands of dollars, so I'm going to charge you that. But on the opposite side, you don't want to undercharge, because we know, we've talked about this before, mate, like if you don't charge enough, people don't see the value. And it's that old chestnut, when you undercharge, it's always that client that really bust your cojones.
Yeah.
Because they want more, because they haven't paid much and they don't see you in that light. There's so much we could talk about, and I'll get back to you in a sec. But I think the other thing was really the whole undercharging thing. If you don't charge enough, people don't see you as someone that should be listened to. I think, you're just the service provider. And I know one of my friends, one of my kind of really good friends, who's a very experienced designer, she once said to me, I see myself as like a trader, I'm providing a service, a trade. I'm a designer. I do the stuff on Illustrator and I do an output, and that's fine. But if the client sees us as someone who's just going to execute their ideas and not charge much for it, then they aren't going to listen to us as much when we say, hey, I think we should perhaps go in this direction,
Yeah. I can sit and nod along with everything you say, all the thing, mainly because I've been through it as well. It's not just because I know about it. It's like I've experienced all of that. And I think that's the thing as well. It's like, I know you said there, that you're a self-trained designer, and self-taught, but you're right. I don't remember having any classes at college or uni doing my degrees and stuff about that. I personally think it should be earlier than that as well. I think it should be in school. I don't think it should just be about freelance designers or whatever. It should be something that could be taught. But the part that you said about understanding the difference you can make to someone's business, to their bottom line is a good thing. And you can get to the nub of that quite early on in the relationship with the prospect, and they would still be a prospect at that point. They're not a client, they're still a lead or a prospect. And that's just by saying, the user question, why now? What will this help? What will this help your business to achieve? Because sometimes people are just like, oh, I think we just need a logo. And you're like, okay, why? What is it going to achieve? And there's been many conversations I've had where a client's come to me looking for a new logo. You ask them those questions and they're like, oh, it's not really going to, I just think it looks tired. And then you can start to have the conversation of, well, it looks tired to you because you're looking at it every single day. Think of what it's like for graphic designers who are looking at their logo every day and they can change it. It's really difficult because we talk about it all the time about consistency of design and being consistent. I see a lot of designers changing their logos all the time because they're bored with it. And it's like, you need to be consistent yourself. Yes, it's nice and creative, but you need to be consistent. And it's ended up that they've come for a logo and then it ends up being a website revision or a new brochure. Because when you start to talk to them about, well, what is it that's going to make money? What's going to get you more sales or get you more customers? Is it the logo? What marketing materials are you using? Oh, we've just knocked up this A4 inkjet that we fold over and we staple it and we send that. And you go, okay, well, maybe if you change that, and then you could potentially get more work, because that would then maybe be like,
I agree.
Well, let's create a brand identity and work on new branding for you. And they'll start to listen to you and trust you. But then if you go in with like, and all that will cost you $50, they're going to be like,
yeah, exactly. It can't be, it's too good to be true. But I think what you just said is important as well. Like they may say to you, my logo's tired, so that's why I preach. And that's kind of what they say on I feel my branding looks tired or whatever. And that's as far as they go. But it's your job to dive deeper and go like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how's it actually affecting you? Like, and ask follow-up questions. And that's why the beauty of what we both preach is really understanding your client as much as you can when you're having the sales conversation and treating it like a sales conversation. Well, how I see it is treating it as a sales conversation, not a discovery call. Because, yes, you have to understand the scope of the project, and yes, you have to understand what it's going to be worth and all that. But I'm really big, and I'm sure you'd agree with going like, let's dive deeper. And it's like the whole iceberg thing. The tip of the iceberg is my branding, my logo design or whatever looks tired. But then underneath they go, well, I've never done anything I don't understand my brand strategy. I don't have a strategy. I've just got a logo design that's done from a friend. I'm losing sales. I'm not getting the reach I want. I'm not getting the types of clients I want. And that's all the stuff that clients don't really understand until you ask them that question. And that's why I think it can be problematic. And I know there's many different kind of ways to look at this, but if you have the model where it's just like, here's my inquiry form, choose which product you want or choose which thing you want, and then pretty much, which I know a lot of people would teach and a lot of people do, you fill out the form, you have the discovery call, and it's already signed, sealed, and delivered. But I think that's a challenge because this is where you run into problems with things going out of scope, because they go, I want this package here, which is 15K, 1,500. You go, awesome, I got a client. And you go, hang on, well, now they want more crap, and it's not going to fit inside that box. So I kind of feel like the whole idea of fill out my form, choose the product you want, and I don't have to do any selling, which is what I hear a lot of people tell me, is a challenge in that way when it comes to your pricing,
I've done that myself as well. And it's just, like you say, if you do that, then it's great. You're like, oh, brilliant. I've got a new client. But in my experience, that's where more of the problem, I don't want to tar clients as problem clients, but that's where more problems occur because there hasn't been a discussion. The client probably has expectations up here, just so high. You're going, I know what I'm going to give them for the money they've paid, but they're like, oh, I'm getting a new brand, I'm getting new this, and they'll just push and push and push. And if you're not confident, because there's probably a good chance that the reason you're doing the questionnaire and buying on your site is because you're not confident yet with having these conversations, is that you will then probably end up being walked over. It'll be a bad relationship with the client, and you don't want that. And it's, yes, it can be uncomfortable initially, you know, talking about money and stuff. But if you figure out early on that they don't have the budget to work with you, isn't that better than finding out later on that they don't have it? But I get it. Yeah, people do have the questionnaire, you know, and you know the drop downs. What's your budget? Choose your budget. Okay, for that we can do this, we can do that. And it gets rid of tire kickers. But at the same time, when it comes to the selling part of it, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to educate the client on what good design and good design services are, because exactly what you said earlier on, they'll also be in a bit of an echo chamber of other business owners who have said, yeah, I got my logo on Fiverr for 20 quid and it was great. So they're now going, the amount of times I've had clients come to me with like 150 quid because they think they're flash because they know that their friends have only paid 50. So they think, I'm going to get the world now. And you're like, I'm sorry, that's not where it works. You know, the way it works. But
and you're so right. And that's why I love hanging out with you, because we, you know, like we're definitely aligned with all the things we talk about. I always say to people, and I hear, I think especially perhaps newer creatives have gone out on their own saying, I'm sweet, I'm super busy, and I've got lots and lots of work. I don't need any work. I'm really good. I don't need any help with selling, which is fine. You know, but then a lot of people, I'll say, okay, but are you making enough money? Are you charging fairly for what you do? And I say, well, no, like I'm getting a lot of lower ticket jobs and it's keeping me busy, but I'm not making much money. And I'm always a big fan of, and I think this is echoing what you said, yes, we want to make sure that we qualify people, because you don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours on meetings with clients who can't afford you. But on the other side, I think when we're getting started, perhaps we have a bit more time, and perhaps that experience of having that sales meeting, asking the questions, is worth it in the long run. In some instances, there we go. Instances.
I'm looking forward to the auto captions on that part.
Yeah, can't stand my accent, but I'm a big fan of kind of qualifying. If that's a short call up front, if that's asking a couple of good qualifying questions. A lot of people I talk to, and you'll be exactly the same, mate. Like it'll be like, I get clients coming to me going, how much does it cost for this? And I'm always a big fan of asking them a couple of good qualifying questions first. What do you think you need? When do you think you need it by? Have you got any idea of this? Then that starts to qualify them, as opposed to going, what's your budget? You know, I think there's a place for that question. And in my experience, it's always been when you're kind of working with a new client and it's a job you've never done before, and you're going, I'm really not sure, and it could be a big job, and you go, I'm not sure how to start with this price. Have you got any kind of considerations around the budget? I think is a good time to ask that. But I think in most cases we ask it too kind of flippantly, and it can get the client anchored on that price. And then we end up disqualifying them before we have that conversation. So I think when it comes to as you mentioned before about the tire kickers, I think there's a lot of kind of value in having those conversations early, so you can get the reps in and go, well, this is how to deal with that question. This is how to deal with this. But if we can't do that, and we don't always kind of want to spend that time with the client, I think there's some other ways to do it other than asking the budget question, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'll do is, because Naboja, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has asked a question. So let's just, you know, I've got questions lined up, but I'd like to kind of get a question in here. So they've asked, how do you feel about tiered logo design packages? For example, a basic logo, color palette, typography, and then you could probably, you know, the usual with guidelines with this. Any insights on pricing strategies based on the value that each tier adds to the client's brand?
That's a great question and a big one. Perhaps if I answer, then I'd love to hear your thoughts, Cole. I think tiered pricing is great. I think understanding your packages is really important, because the more you understand and can talk them confidently about what you're delivering, and you understand the scope of what each thing entails, it's easier to sell that, and it's easier to productize that. But on the other hand, so I would say, yes, I think it's a smart idea to have tiered packages, and kind of most of my clients do. I know a good friend and client of mine, Cal, he does this really well. He's got really nice packages, but also understanding that, there might be some kind of plugins to those. There might be some projects that are just completely bespoke. So I think, yes, the tiered packages, when it comes to pricing them, the classic kind of pricing thing, which I think works kind of really, and there's a lot of ways we can talk about this, is, of course, most people will always go for the middle one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want people to go for the middle one, you make that price close enough to the first one that it's not a big leap. So it could be your mid-tier package would be, let's say kind of 1900, and your intro kind of logo design package could be, say, I don't know, 1600 or something like that, maybe. That's what a lot of people do, and that's just like classic pricing and psychology. But I think there's also other ways that can bring in ideas like price engineering into when we're presenting that price. So, if your client's paying you half up front and a half at the end, or a third, or what a lot of my clients do, which I really like now, and this is perhaps also for larger projects that would span over like a month or two, they invoice on the month. So they say you can pay a deposit at the start, and you pay them the second payment at the end of month one, and the third payment at the end of month two. So I'm kind of going a little bit off track.
But it makes
tiered pricing works.
Yeah,
I think it works, and I think it's important to know what's included and what's not included. It's important to be confident about what the client needs. So at the end of that call, you can say, well, I think you need this. Would you like to go ahead? Which saves time with all the kind of back and forth. And it means you don't always have to do a proposal, which is good. But I think when you're kind of presenting that price, which is what I was going to come into before, if it is split, then you can kind of present it as split. It's two payments of $750. You pay one now, and you pay one in a month's time. Just doing stuff like that makes it easier for the client to go yes, because they go, I only have to pay $750 today.
Yeah.
Because I see clients sometimes they have like a $6,000 job, and they'll go, it's $6,000. The client goes, whoa. But if you said, well, it's three payments of two, because we want to make it easier for you to pay this, and it's kind of based on the milestones, that's a nicer way to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Cole.
Very similar. I've contentiously, I suppose, I understand the psychology of the three package, lower, middle, the one you want them to go for, and anchor price, like the really high bells and whistles, this is everything. And nobody wants to be the cheapskate, so they won't go for that one, they'll go for the middle one. And I have always been like, if I want them to go for the middle one, I'm just going to tell them that that's how much it is to work with me. And maybe,
yes, definitely. I agree with
and maybe I'm like, maybe I am losing clients because I'm not giving them a choice. But then there's also that thing of choice paralysis, and the client's like, oh,
yeah,
I don't want to make the wrong decision. And this kind of leads, I'm not going to talk about it, but this leads into why I do the one logo concept approach and don't offer multiple logo concepts either, because of choice paralysis and the client worried and potentially later on going, oh, I think I may have made a mistake. So sweep logos away, because that's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Cole, actually, I'm totally agree with you. I guess just to kind of qualify what I was saying, I think it's good to know your packages, but present the one that you know
okay.
And you say, here's
right.
So I'm in agreement with you. Sorry to butt in, because, and just to kind of quickly I mentioned this, I know that what a lot of us have the tendency to do is to go, I know the client needs this, but I don't know if they can afford it, so I'm just going to do this, or I'm doing them a favor by offering them this cheaper thing, even though I know it's not what they need. I think always got to lead and go, this is what I think you need.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to know if you do have tiered packages that you do have three just in your mind, so you can go, I think it's this one.
Okay,
So
yeah.
sorry, just to
no, that makes sense, because there is obviously the option of you can go to, you know, a designer's website and they've got bronze, silver, and gold, and they're there, and the client has to choose. You know, that's I'm not a fan of that.
And nobody wants the bronze.
I'm not. Nobody wants the bronze. So that makes perfect sense. And again, it's, you know, it's a difficult conversation for many people to have with the client, and they would rather that it was just an off the shelf thing and they don't have to have the conversation. But again, if you start to figure out what the client needs, then you can, as you say, if you have your packages in your head, you go, well, if they went for the full thing, they would get this element of that, which I know they need, but I also know they don't need everything else. So that then lets you then create a custom package for them and say, okay, look, here's what I feel that you need. From everything that we've discussed and what you're looking to do, this is everything that you need. Here's my pricing. And then it's just then important that you don't panic a little bit and undercut yourself before you've even presented, because as you said, you're like, oh, I don't know if they can afford this though. I'll just take a little bit off. I'll still do all the same amount of work, but I'll just lower it a little bit. I'll lower it a little bit.
And then it blows out. But I think, I think you're right. And I think that what we've got to understand, and this is what I mean, people say there's like these two schools of thought. Some people say you don't have to have the right mindset, you just have to go out and do the stuff. And then other people go, well, if you have the right ideas and the right lens for each of these things, which is kind of what I believe. Well, no, it is what I believe. Then it's easier to do it. So the right lens for me would be going, well, I need to act like a consultant, and a consultant would say, well, here's what I think is the best solution for you. I'm doing right by the client by offering them the full thing, and then only then perhaps if there is pushback, then I can make an adjustment if I have to and if I want to. But you have to do right by the client and not go, well, they're a small business, they probably don't have any money, I'm just going to go the $500 thing, and then you find out, well, they sold their house, they got an inheritance, and they've got funding, and you just screwed yourself over, but also screwed the client over because they're not getting what they need.
They're not getting what they need. I think you've touched on it as well, in that, you know, if you go for, and we're still kind of talking about Navoja's question here, but let's say you do the tiered one and you're like, okay, they need everything. What they're asking for is everything. And you're like, oof. And I've promised myself that every new client, I'm going to put my prices up by 5%. I've promised myself I'm going to raise it. But that means it's going to be $10,000, right? Some people will be listening to this going, oh, the dream, but everyone can get there. And the client may push back on that. But that is where you have the opportunity to start to bring, rather than instantly going, oh, okay, I'll reduce my prices, or because you know you can't take anything out because you've already decided they need everything that you've just given them a price for. That's when you can start to say, okay, I understand it's a big commitment price-wise. Normally I do 50-50, but, you know, I'm happy to talk about, you know, staged payments. Exactly. It could be a third, as you say. It could be 25, 25, 25. Or, funnily enough, the way you mentioned it, where it's like, I'll take a deposit to secure it, and then it's not a retainer as such, but you are saying, I do two options. First of the month, and I use Go Cardless in the UK. I don't know if it's outside of the UK, but basically the client signs a mandate with me, and I take the money from their account on a set date. So it's a direct debit. So I don't have to send an invoice and, well, it's meant to be paid on the first. And they agree and sign up to that, and it's great. It's really, really good. Or what's the other option? So there's that. Or I do it on a basis of, okay, well, the project, I'm going to break it down into stages. So we're going to do research and sketching, and then I'm going to, firm up a concept, and then I'm going to create the final logo, then I'm going to create guidelines. So before each stage, I will invoice you, and I will not do any more work until you pay that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it needs to be paid within 7 days. If it's longer than that, then it's not going to, the project's just going to, the schedule's going to fall apart. And I don't want to be working on this for a year just because I'm waiting on you paying the next stage. So you have to put in, and yes, there's a bit more sort of, I suppose, experience from me in that, and a bit more confidence. Basically, I go into every job these days, even if I've not got much work on, I go in with the mindset of, I'm not going to be upset if I don't get this project.
Yeah.
If they don't work to the way I want to work. Because what is the point in being a freelancer if you're working to the client's method of working?
Yeah.
You're then just kind of an employee. And you're under their control. You will work when they want. And you're like, that's not what this is about. I mean, being a freelancer is hard. We all want that dream, nice level of income, but we all know it's like this. And so when it's up high, you're like, oh, I've got lots of money, but I can't spend it because I might have a dip and I need to make sure I cover that. So the other perks are, you get to choose when you work. You get to take time off when you work. If you give all of that control up, then you don't really have anything.
I agree.
That's really,
I agree. And I think,
a bonus of that.
And I agree. And I think that's really the mindset for everybody watching this, and the mindset that I take and you take as well, that when you go into a meeting with a client, you have to have, and this is something that my dad would really kind of drummed into me because he was always, he's still alive. He's not dead, by the way. I say he was always, he's always telling me, the mindset is, you go in and you go, can I find in his words, can I find a need? Can I find a need that I can solve, or a problem I can solve them for the client? That's the intention of having this other meeting with the client. It's not to sell them anything. It's to go, can I find a need? Are they going to be good to work with? Do I want to work with them? And if they kind of tick all those boxes, then you go ahead, So that takes some of the pressure off you to go, I need to make this sale. You have to remember, you have to know your numbers too. And you have to know that when you're kind of meeting with clients, even at a low, most people should be closing about half the clients they get at least, So if you have the mindset of, well, this interview went badly, I missed out on that job, but that says to me, if I got a 50% closing ratio or a close rate, that the next one I'll probably get. So you have to understand that the numbers are working for you as well. You're picking up skills on those interviews as well. So even if they reject your pricing and they don't want to work with you, or they're totally awful, and you go, perhaps I don't want to kind of take them on, you have to know that the next person is probably going to be better for you. And the other, I think, point to your point, Cole, is understand the opportunity and value of your time, which is not directly related to pricing. But when you think about these crummy clients, and I haven't had many bad clients over my lifetime. Thank you. Someone up there looking down on me, but I don't want to kind of diss on clients. But when you're taking on jobs that you don't want, you're taking on jobs just because you need the money. Yes, I understand that, because we've all done that.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, if you're working with a client, and I know I hear this a lot with retainer clients, who my clients work with, I go, what's the opportunity and value of your time? If that client left you tomorrow, would you be gutted, or would you be slightly relieved? Could you spend that time to go out and look and create some content, create some promo, and find a new client? Don't know where I was going with that. I kind of went way off track.
That makes sense. It reminds me of something that sort of a friend of mine who's in a group that I'm in, Ian Hamilton, said to me once. He's a designer. He's worked in the corporate world and he's worked freelance, so he's got a really good he has a good understanding of what the corporate world want, you know, so bigger businesses when they're looking for designers, what they're looking for. And I remember he said to me, and it's always the obvious things that you hear, you go, what's so obvious, but why have I never thought that way? So it ties into kind of what your dad said about going in and trying to find a need and stuff like that. Ian said, look, as designers, the default is to go into a meeting and try to win the client, right? I want to win this client. I want to win this client. And he's like, that's the wrong way around. They should be trying to win you. Yeah. They should be saying, I want to work with you and I'm going to prove to you that I'm going to be a good client to work with. And I thought that's a really good way to turn it around. And if you're in that meeting and they are just not doing anything to kind of come at least halfway with good answers or whatever, it's, you know, it's, I mean, it's not a fail-safe thing, but it did make me think about meetings in a very different way. I thought, yeah, you know, I've been doing this game for a while. You know, I've got a thick skin now because of a lot of meetings and stuff. Why shouldn't I feel like they want to work with me? And I suppose it is probably a bit easier the longer you've been in, because you've got more experience and more value that you feel you could, you know, from that experience and skill. And because I've been creating content for a while, I do get more clients sort of coming to me, and it's like, okay, well, why should I work with you? And I'll be honest, I've never outright asked that question, but just saying it there, I'm thinking, maybe I should say, you know, okay, you know, we've had a good meeting here, you know, I have a full understanding of what it is you need. I can definitely offer those services.
Yeah.
Why should I take you on as a client? Now, I probably would never say that. I don't think I would ever say that. But it'd be really interesting to see what happened if you ask someone that, you know?
I think that's a great question. I think a lot of people ask that in a different way. Well, not a lot of people, but a nice way to ask that in a different way. Because if you read Oren Clef's book, Pitch Anything, he's a real big fan of that ideology, which is like, and you know, he comes from a totally different world to us, but he's a very good salesman and very good at pitching. And he talks about the idea of auditioning the client, and in the push and pull, and a whole bunch of different kind of psychological things you can do. But I think at its core, like another way to say what you're saying with that question is, you know, I want to make sure that you're a good fit to work with me.
It is. It's about it is. With you. It's exactly what it is. It's
a
fit.
Nice, easy
it's
way
the
to
fit.
say it, you know?
It's the fit. I like that. I like the, you know, you're auditioning. You know, it's kind of it's like a dance, isn't it? You kind of want it to be back and forth. You go, this is going to work. We can work together. And you know, I'm pretty good with initial meetings. I try to bring some humor in as early as I can into a meeting, because it can be a bit tense early on. Everybody's like they're protecting their budget and their money, and they don't want to get ripped off. And you're like, I really want to get this, you know, because I need the money and I need this. But so there's this kind of thing. So I try to break the ice quite early on.
And I think as well, Col, I would say, sorry, before you move on, I think, you know, auditioning the client, different pricing things that we talk about, they do take time to build up to that stuff. You know, that's not something that you have the confidence to do when you're in business, if you're coaching or a designer, you know. But it is about how you kind of hold yourself. And like, you know, we all talk about our process, and we all know that the client buys the process. You know, so part of that is part of our process should be how I kind of hold myself in the interview, how I conduct it, how I kind of set an agenda, how I show the client that I know my stuff, and I'm here to help them. So all the stuff I think is important, and it gets easier as we get more experienced, and also how we're kind of positioned, like you mentioned before. You know, you're creating content, that's a great way to kind of position yourself as a desirable item, or in the words of
Yeah.
Russell Brunson, um, oh God, the attractive character. Yeah, Russell Brunson talks about. There's probably another discussion. But that's why I think it's sometimes problematic seeing stuff. There are lots of different ways to approach what we would call kind of value-based pricing, and I think that's something that's worth, if you want to have a chat about it at some stage, because I think we can see things online and go, that sounds like me, but I could never do that myself because that person's way more experienced than me. So, but I think there are ways you can do it that are applicable to newer designers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, it's I'm always trying to put myself back into the shoes of where I was as a, deer in the headlights moment, all the different stages that have pushed me out of my comfort zone as I've gone along on my journey. And I've still got comfort zone pushers to come. I know that they're always going to be there.
That's good.
If you start to feel, incredibly relaxed about it, where's the, what's kind of pushing you to kind of keep moving on? But I mean, great if you can, but I'm just trying to have a look at sort of what questions I've got here. Let's see. So, another one, which is kind of, which is a reason that people worry about talking about pricing, is what would you say are the best ways, or just don't even have to be the best ways, what are some ways to address and overcome common pricing objections from clients?
Okay. Well, I guess it depends on the objection. Like I guess a common one. Well, what's a common one that you hear, Cole?
Probably deadline. I need it by next week. I'm like, well, it's going to take 3 weeks. So that's not good enough for me. I need to do it now. What can we do? What can we do?
Totally. I think objections are, I like to think of objections as they're not always there. Well, okay. First and foremost, I think objections are sometimes a good thing, because it means the client is considering your thing. And if they weren't, they'll just go no. Yeah. So when you hear an objection like, I need it by next week, or I need it by this thing, or it's a bit too much for me, that is often something for you to use as a discussion point, because otherwise they'll just say no, right? So they're not always a bad thing. Objections, and I wouldn't say that a deadline is an objection. I think that's just more a condition. So they go, we would love to have it by next week. By all means, can you do it next week? That's the question you have to ask yourself. If you can, hey, yep, I think we can probably kind of make that happen, but perhaps the price might have to change, or we have a specific set of, or perhaps we have rush fees, or whatever you want to call them, for that type of job. I don't think that's an objection per se. Ones that I think probably more, what I hear a lot of is, I need to talk to someone else, or yep, and that's fine, or it's too expensive. Can we kind of change the price? Can we kind of lower the price? That's the one that I hear a lot, and I think that's up to you. If you hear that objection, someone says to you, that's too much for me, we can't do that, then you have to ask further questions. All right, so I think objections are tricky, and I feel like the better we understand, and I guess have limits, and I think the better we understand how we want to do business, the easier it is to deal with those objections. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
That was a real tricky one, because I was trying to kind of think
I know, because you kind of need sometimes you need a specific situation to do that. But I think it kind of, for me, the objections thing, and it's the same with objections with a client objecting to a logo design concept, is if you've done some good work in the beginning, asking all the right questions, you can actually throw back at them what they've told you.
Exactly.
And it's and in a way, it's the best feeling in the world, by the way, when you can do that. You know, it's like, so with a logo example would be, because I do the one concept approach, so I don't give them choices. I'm like, this is the best solution for your logo design, for your business, from everything that we've done. Oh, but Carl, you know, I really, you know, I kind of told you, I mentioned it before, but, you know, because this is I've had this a few times, you know, that I like this football team and their opponents are there, they wear blue. I can't have blue in the logo. And you're like, yeah, I know, I heard you. And, you know, I acknowledge what you're saying, because that's important as well. You have to acknowledge that you're listening to them. But if you remember, Tom, when we were doing all the strategic work and we were digging into your audience and, you know, and the personality and the tone that we want your brand to have, blue was the right thing, because we want the trust and we want the calmness and we want all of that in there. Remember, the logo's not for you. We're trying to build your brand up to speak. And so it's using that. And you can do the same with pricing. It's just like, you know, well, remember when we talked about this, you want to achieve these, let's even say they're KPIs, you know, you've got these things you want to do. So in order for us to do that, we will need to do these things. Now, if price is too much for you right now, we can do the first two, because that will get everything going. And then what we can do is we can then come back, and when you've accumulated the budget for that side of it, we can do that. How does that sound? Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Let's do that. You know, because you have to finish it on something like, how does that sound? Because you want a response. Because if they go, no, that doesn't sound good, you go, well, what would sound good? What would work for you? And you just, it's a bit like mentoring and stuff, where you're trying not to give the solution. Well. They have an answer, and you're trying to get the answer from them. And if the answer is, we just don't have that budget, then okay, you now have a fixed amount of money. You go, okay, well, I can do the first two bits for what the budget you have.
Yep.
Shall we go ahead with that?
And I think,
you know,
I think that's a really nice way to frame that question. I think a couple of things. When you get that pricing question too early, how much will it cost? I always say that's a great question. Perhaps if I start by explaining this first. So, you know, you don't, it is like playing tennis or having a bit of kind of back and forth. And that's with kind of controlling the call. I think the timing objection, if it's, I don't know if now's a good time for us, or if they kind of throw that out there. That's why it's also kind of good to ask them at the start of the call, why is now a good time to be? Because
they can't go.
And you say, but you said at the start, you know, and that's a fair question, because remember, you're doing right by the client by helping them make a decision. If a client does not want to spend the money, then, you know, that's fine. If they don't have the money, that's fine too. Can you kind of make a workaround for them?
Sometimes they're, you know, as I say, sometimes where the example, you're like, you know, why now, why not later? And then later on they go, or it's sometimes if you've given, you know, they're maybe embarrassed that they don't have the budget. There's lots of reasons. Not everyone, you know, clients can have a lack of confidence as well, because they've never done this before, and they maybe get a real shock when you give them a price, and they're like, oof, and they don't want to be embarrassed, and that's when they'll say things like, well, maybe not right, because they don't want to be embarrassed to say, I can't afford that. And I always try to make, because you can you learn over time, you learn to read people, and I can often find out what that is, and that's when you can come in and you can kind of ease them out of feeling embarrassed in that way by saying, in the past I've had clients that really haven't had the budget, but we've been able to solve it by staging payments or something, and they'll go, staging payments would be a great thing. Could we do that? So, you know, it's one of the things that, you know, you say on your website about getting designers confident with selling, and it does take time. It takes longer if you do it on your own, which I did a lot of it on my own, and I wished I'd kind of had someone to kind of teach me to kind of be able to kind of shortcut a lot of things, shortcut the right things, not shortcut the things that need to be spent time on. But you know what you're saying there is spot on. I mean, I think we spend a lot of our calls just agreeing with one another because
Yeah.
because we're on the same wavelength, and that's why I thought I was earlier on when I was like, oh, see, now I don't offer the 3 pricing. No, that's not what I mean. I still do it the same way that you do. I was like, well, we can't. We're still on the same page.
I think, I think what it is like, it's just, I really like the idea. You just have to be a genuine human caring person. And I love the idea of, and there's this idea, and I can never quite articulate it, but I always have it in my mind, like what's something you could do that doesn't make you money, but does right by the client. If you can do those kind of things as much as you can, like not thinking about the money, but going, can I do something right for someone else? Not screwing yourself over, not losing money, I'm saying, but can you do right by them? I think that's the right thing to do, but I don't think we shouldn't go into meetings going, I expect to roll back my price. And I remember reading a lot of design books, and it's always down to the client's budget. What I was going to mention before about the pricing objection thing is, I think that's why it's quite cool to think and ask your clients about the numbers. And this is, again, something that comes with confidence. But when I teach this, I say to my clients, look, do you need to understand, okay, let's say doing the brand strategy, or even just doing the visual identity side of it. Do you need to understand a little bit about their customers and the demographics and who's buying from them and who their competition is and all that stuff? And the answer is always yes. And so I say, okay, so it's important to know the numbers, and because if you can understand a little bit about the inner workings of how much your potential client is selling their stuff for, where their leads are coming in from, how they're kind of generating work, then you can really kind of get a bit more context around how much where your price kind of sits in with their revenue. And I think that alone can give confidence. So I always say to clients, like, say to your customers, hey, can I say to your clients, sorry, I need to get a bit of an idea about how your business works, understand what type of customers you're working with. So like, where are most of your customers coming from? Is it from Instagram? Is it from a brick and mortar store? All right, and how many kind of customers are you getting on average per week or per day? What's your average spend? Asking questions like that takes confidence, but it gives you perspective. And then you go, well, I found out, let's say this cafe is making $3,000 a day, which means they're making 3 times 7, $21,000 on average per week. And I'm going to charge them $3,000 for their brand identity, right? That can give you the confidence to go, well, I don't know how much they got in the bank, but I know how much they're bringing in, and I know how much of a percentage that is. So that gives me the confidence to go, well, I think that's a small thing for them to pay back,
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it kind of takes me back to, funnily enough, my very first coach that I hired for myself when I reached an impasse and I was stuck and I couldn't get past a certain threshold of the amount of money I was making. I was working non-stop. I was too cheap and I was too good for the money, so I was busy all the time. And I remember when she came to see me, I'd heard her 60-second pitch at a business networking event, and she was saying all these things, and I was like, that's me. Well, she's talking about me. I need to speak to this lady. And she did that. She basically, at the very start of the call, I said it was an in-person meeting. She said at the very start of the meeting, it was that question of, okay, so let's pretend we fixed everything, right? What's a service that you offer right now that if we fix the issues that you're having, how many more of those could you get? And it's kind of tied into what's a customer worth if we get you more customers. And I think I was doing website design at the time. I don't do that anymore. And I said, I'd like to get more website stuff. She said, well, how many are you getting right now? How many you want? I said, I'm maybe getting sort of one every 3 months or something. And she's like, what do you charge for that? I said, well, I'd like to charge £1,000 for it. And she said, okay, so if we fixed it all and we got everything the way you want it, do you think you would get? I said, yeah, I would probably be able to get one a month because I would have these things. She's like, okay, so there's an extra £12,000. And she moved on from that. And we just started talking about things and stuff. And then at the end, she gave me her price. And it was a lot of money for me at the time. It was like, it was £3,000. And it was for, it was over 6 weeks or something like that. And it's a lot of money. But she had all the tactics. And she's like, if you pay £1,000 today and pay £1,000 next week, you get it for £2,000. And I was like, and she could see, and she went, now remember, you're potentially going to make £12,000 from this. And it just, I mean, I was still going, oh my God, because it was all the money I had, it was my safety net. But at the same time, I was ready to get rid of my safety net and go, I need to make a change. I need the accountability to do this. I need to remove a safety net so that I do these things. But I thought it was the first time I'd ever experienced that in my life, where she'd held on to this 12,000 figure through the whole 1 hour meeting. And then when she saw that I was getting a little bit wobbly, she went, you're going to pay £2,000 to make 12. Yeah. And I went,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's do it. And what happened was 2 months later, I had a £10,000 month.
Exactly. Now,
part of me is like, oh, it was coincidence or whatever, but whatever it was, it was just like, holy crap. Yeah. And
I think, Cole, that's such a good point for everybody here. A lot of people are like, oh, I could not use any of those like pricing tactics. I could not do any kind of like scarcity or anything like that. I think you've got to be authentic with with what you're doing. 100%. That's how I live my life. But the thing is, people love to put things off. People love to let fear take over and go, oh, far out, I don't know if I want to spend that right now, so I'll think about it. And they delay and they delay and they delay. Our job is to pull people from the status quo and go, this is a good investment for you. If you invest in your brand right now, then you'll be seeing results pretty quickly. So if I can make that easier for you by saying, yes, there's a price and difference if you pay now and pay later, then I feel that's a positive thing, because people are so quick to go, oh, it's too big and scary to do that, I'll put it off. And that doesn't do them justice, just like you said. I think the other thing is like a good question to ask at the end, and it's for smaller, if you're working with smaller clients who sell small products, it's harder to do this. But I think if you're working with a larger business and you know the numbers, you can say to them, well, a good question to ask yourself is, how many extra X would you have to sell to pay back this investment? I think it's a great question. And if it's 1 or 2, that's great. And you go, well, this brand I'm going to create for you is going to last you for 3 years. So really, it's a pretty quick investment.
It's a good deal.
Well, it's a pretty quick ROI,
Yeah. I think one thing I will say is that that coach was very much a sales coach, because it's the thing I really struggled with. And I will say that there was a lot of things, a lot of tactics and stuff that she taught me that I've never used, because just like you said, I just felt they weren't for me. It felt like I was tricking people into working with me, and I didn't like that. And I've never liked that. Now, that I may actually, I probably could have made a lot more money if I'd done a lot of that stuff, but it just didn't feel right to me. So,
yes.
And this is a whole other.
On the other hand, if they were thinking about working with you or I, and we helped them make that decision, would they be better off after working with us? I see. Yeah,
as long as you're not. Yeah, the difference is, I didn't want to use them because, it was probably a confidence thing, just like you said there. There's a confidence thing. It was new to me, and I felt it wasn't right for me. But at no point, I think, if I had used those, would I be trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes and rip them off.
No.
It's what you said there. What you're trying to do is you're just trying to get them to make a decision to work with you because you know you can help them, and you're going to do it the right way. It's not because, these guys don't know anything about design. I'm going to make lots of money for very little work. There are people out there that do that, and we've all probably had clients come to us, and that's a reason that they will guard their budget, because they have been hurt before by an unscrupulous designer, and it sucks because it makes your job much harder in those meetings to get, to go, like, it's not happening all the time, but I have had people who've come to me and said, oh, this is I had one person come to me and say, you're like the 5th designer I've worked with, and I went, yeah, I'm probably not going to work with you either. If you've been through 5 designers, it's probably not the designers that are the issue. If it's 1, 2, but 4 or 5, you're like, yeah, I get a feeling that you're a nightmare and nobody wants to work with you. So, and there's also the thing as well, I would say, some people say, if someone comes along and you're like, yeah, they're not the right fit for me, they're going to be a nightmare, I'm just going to give them a really high price, and if they go for it, it'll be worth it. I don't subscribe to that, because even if the money's good, if they're a nightmare of a client, you're going to hate you're just going to hate your working life for however long that project is. And it will make you realize that money isn't everything, because they're making your life absolutely miserable, which will then
they'll live in your head 24/7.
Yeah, and it will then start to impact the clients that you did like to work with, because everything is them and they're putting it on. So I just think that whole thing of just charge more and it'll scare them off, I would rather just say, I don't think I'm the right designer for you, for whatever reason.
But I think as well, and we're probably kind of getting in close to time. When I see people saying, put your prices up, change your marketing, and you'll get bigger clients. Well, I go, yeah, maybe, but you've also got to have experience for that. And on top of that, you've still got to have the sales skills to be able to sell those larger clients. Like, I think that there's a lot of focus on marketing and going, if you get your marketing and your positioning and everything right as a designer, then you can attract and close those bigger clients. But you're still going to be able to have the confidence to charge those prices and to know how to deal with that $3 million company or whatever, or that startup that's got all that funding, and they're very clever. Because I know what a lot of my clients have told me is that it's really hard to, when you have a meeting with someone who knows this, who knows their stuff, who knows about branding, who knows about marketing, they're very problem and solution aware, and then they go, hang on, but I know just as much as you. So that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But I think and that's, I guess, kind of come back to what I said at the start, like the qualifying people too early by going, and what's your budget, and the avoiding the sales stuff at the start, because you see the bigger people doing that and go, we just have our prices and people come straight to us and that's fine. That means you don't have those, I guess, soft skills to approach and sell those larger clients when you do start having them coming through,
Yeah. And just kind of looking at the chat here, we are, I will wind it up because it's been an hour, and we probably will organize future calls because there's things that we can talk about. So just quickly, the boys just asked another question. Is the whole $1 million logo, and I'm doing air quotes because there's air quotes on the text, is the whole $1 million logo gig for real? Or did someone accidentally add an extra zero while playing graphic design Monopoly? I think that's context. I think that's newspaper headlines, where it's like, logo costs $1 million, and you go, no, the logo element itself didn't. Having to rebrand all of the trucks and all the signage and all of the rebranding probably took $1 million, potentially a lot more. Like your Shell and BP, who are constantly trying to make themselves look friends of the earth, spend millions and millions and millions on that. So there isn't some lucky freelance designer who's landed £1 million in their bank from designing a logo. But I mean, maybe there is. Maybe maybe your pentagrams and stuff have charged that for a logo. I suppose the most expensive one that I've kind of heard of, and I know was true, is the Steve Jobs and the Next logo with Oh God, the designer's gone right out of my head. Really famous designer. So when Steve Jobs got booted out of Apple, he wanted to create Next. Is it Next? Was it the Next Cube or something like that?
Mm.
Somebody pop into my, hopefully somebody will pop it in the text, what the name is. Anyway, whoever it was said to him, okay, I'll do it for you. I'm going to give you one logo and it's $100,000. And Steve Jobs went, okay. Because Steve Jobs was one of those people who understood branding and what
Yeah,
the value was. So what you're saying there about people in bigger corporations and stuff, they do have a good understanding, and that is a good thing because they will then value you as a skilled person, but a conversation will be very different to when you're having a conversation with someone who doesn't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
We just had a fellow Kiwi jump in, Mr. Burton, Mr. Craig Burton's just
Hello,
jumped
Craig.
in saying Kia ora. Paul Rand was the designer.
Yes.
So Craig saved the day. Craig's come in just as we're finishing.
Thanks, Craig.
But an hour goes quickly. Thanks to everybody that watched. I'm keen to kind of know what happens with the stream because it's been giving me this warning the whole time. But obviously people can see it, so it may be that it may have issues with the replay. We'll see what happens. But yeah, really appreciate your time. I'm going to just put up another screen which has your website and stuff. So I'm just going to go through.
Thanks, Cole. Some Hayden pitchr. Yep. Mm-hmm. I agree so much. Mm-hmm. I just on no, I'm too old for that, Cole. It's Instagram's great. I've got a free group on Facebook, but you can find that on my Instagram. Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm not too old. I should get on there. Oh, sweet! I like that. Feels special. Good shit. There's so much more. Oh, that's okay. We did pretty well. We did pretty well. No, that's rubbish. Thanks, Cole. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Cole. Thanks, mate.